Opening. What if everything you were taught about truth was wrong? What if the answers you've been searching for in books, in systems, in the opinions of authorities, were never out there at all? 500 years ago, in a damp stone cave deep in the mountains of southern China, a man lay dying. He had been beaten nearly to death by his own government. He had been hunted by assassins. He had been exiled to a place so remote, so poisonous, so forsaken, that to be sent there was considered a death sentence. He had no food, no medicine, no books, no companions. He had even carved himself a stone coffin because he knew any night could be his last. And yet, on one particular night, lying on cold rock, staring up at a sky full of indifferent stars, this man experienced something that would change the course of human thought for the next 5 centuries. He didn't discover a new continent. He didn't invent a new machine. He didn't decode the laws of physics. He looked inward and found that the truth had been inside him all along. His name was Wang Yangming, and this is his story. Dim the lights, put on your headphones, and let me take you back to the turbulent middle years of the Ming Dynasty, an era of palace eunuchs, political purges, and suffocating orthodoxy, to watch a boy named Wang Shoren walk into the fire and emerge as the light that would illuminate 500 years of human thought. Are you ready? Let's begin. The boy who refused to be ordinary. In the 8th year of the Shonghua reign, the 31st of October, 1472, a boy was born into a prestigious scholarly family in Yuyao, Zhejiang province. His grandfather, Wang Lun, was a jinshi, a successful candidate in the highest imperial examinations. His father, Wang Hua, would go on to become the Zhuangyuan, the top scholar in the entire empire, in the 17th year of Chenghua. In Ming Dynasty China, a family like this had a script already written for its sons: memorize the classics, pass the examinations, enter the bureaucracy, bring glory to your ancestors. It was a conveyor belt of prestige, and every well-born boy was expected to step onto it without question. But Wang Shoren, the boy who would become Wang Yangming, was not like other boys. Legend has it that he did not speak until the age of 5, not because he couldn't, but because, in some strange way, he was listening, absorbing. His grandfather would read the classics aloud, and the silent boy would memorize every word perfectly without ever repeating them. One day, a wandering monk passed through the village. He looked at the boy, touched his head, and murmured, "What a remarkable child, but his secret has been spoken aloud." A cryptic reference to his original name, which contained a character meaning cloud, hinting that his birth had been foretold in a dream. His grandfather, startled by the monk's words, changed the boy's name to Shoren to preserve benevolence. And just like that, the boy began to speak. Whether this story is literally true matters less than what it reveals. From the very beginning, Wang Yangming was someone who operated on a different frequency from the world around him. At the age of 11, he moved to Beijing with his father, who had taken up an official post in the private academy where he studied. He asked his teacher a question that no 11-year-old was supposed to ask: what is the most important thing a person can do in life? The teacher gave the standard answer: study hard, pass the examinations, and earn an official rank. The boy shook his head slowly. "I don't think passing examinations is the most important thing. Perhaps the most important thing is to study the way of the sages, to become a truly good person." The teacher stared at him, speechless. Think about that for a moment. An 11-year-old boy, born into the heart of the examination industrial complex of imperial China, the most achievement-driven, credential-obsessed culture in the ancient world, and he was already questioning whether the whole system was pointing in the wrong direction. At 13, he was married to the daughter of a high-ranking official in Jiangxi province. On the day of the wedding, as guests filled the hall, as musicians played, as incense burned, the groom vanished. They searched everywhere. They finally found him in a Taoist temple down the road, deep in conversation with a priest about the nature of longevity and the cultivation of the spirit. He had completely forgotten about his own wedding. This was young Wang Yangming, a boy who cared nothing for ceremony, nothing for convention, but who was consumed, utterly consumed, by a single burning question: what is the truth of human existence? And how do I find it? The 7 Days of Bamboo. By 15, Wang Yangming had begun his formal study of Zhu Xi's Neo-Confucianism, the dominant philosophical system of Ming Dynasty China. Zhu Xi, the great 12th century thinker, had built an intellectual cathedral. His system was comprehensive, logical, and most importantly, officially endorsed by the state. It was the framework within which every examination answer had to be written, every moral argument had to be constructed. To challenge Zhu Xi was to challenge the empire itself. At the heart of Zhu Xi's philosophy was a concept called Zhu Wu Jiji, the investigation of things to extend knowledge. The idea was deceptively simple: universal principles, what Zhu Xi called tianli, heavenly reason, are embedded in every object in the natural world. By carefully observing and analyzing external things, you can gradually uncover these principles and, through accumulation, arrive at a comprehensive understanding of truth. Wang Yangming took this idea seriously, deadly seriously. In the 5th year of the Hongzhi reign, 1492, the 21-year-old Wang Yangming and his friend Qian Yuyang decided to put Zhu Xi's theory to the ultimate empirical test. If tianli truly exists within all things, then it should be discoverable through focused observation. And what simpler object could there be than a bamboo plant? Wang Yangming had a chair placed in front of a bamboo grove. He sat down, and he stared. Day 1, nothing. Day 2, nothing. Day 3, his friend Qian Yuyang collapsed from exhaustion and illness. He gave up, but Wang Yangming continued. Day 4, Day 5, Day 6. He sat there like a monk in meditation, staring at the bamboo from dawn until dark, searching, desperately searching, for the universal principle that was supposed to be hidden within it. On the 7th day, Wang Yangming collapsed. He was carried to his bed, feverish, weak, and profoundly disturbed. 7 days. 7 days of staring at bamboo, and the bamboo had told him nothing. It was still just bamboo. Leaves, stalks, nodes, roots. Where was the heavenly principle? Where was the truth that was supposed to reveal itself to the diligent observer? This failure left a scar on Wang Yangming's soul. For the first time, a hairline crack appeared in the edifice of Zhu Xi's philosophy. A quiet, heretical thought began to whisper in the back of his mind. What if Zhu Xi was wrong? What if the truth isn't out there, in bamboo, in rocks, in rivers, in the 10,000 things of the external world? Then where is it? He wouldn't find the answer for another 16 years, and the universe would have to break him completely before he was ready to hear it. Third, into the abyss. In the 12th year of the Hongzhi reign, 1499, Wang Yangming, now 28, finally passed the imperial examinations and received a position in the Ministry of Justice. For a few years, he served competently and quietly, but the political landscape of the Ming Dynasty was shifting beneath his feet. The Hongzhi Emperor Zhu Yukong was a decent and conscientious ruler, but his health was failing. When he died in 1505, his 15-year-old son Zhu Huzhao ascended the throne as the Zhengde Emperor. Zhengde was, to put it charitably, not interested in governing. He was interested in hunting, in acrobatics, in disguises, in women, in building elaborate pleasure palaces. He surrounded himself with a clique of 8 powerful eunuchs, led by the cunning and ruthless Lu Jin. Lu Jin was a spider at the center of a web. He controlled access to the emperor, manipulated court appointments, eliminated his rivals, and accumulated vast personal wealth. He was, in every meaningful sense, the shadow emperor of China. When a group of 20 honest officials, led by Daisian, submitted a joint memorial urging the emperor to dismiss Lu Jin and his fellow eunuchs, Lu Jin's response was swift and merciless. All 20 men were arrested, thrown into the imperial prison, and tortured. Wang Yangming watched this injustice unfold, and something inside him caught fire. He knew the risks. He was a minor official, a 6th-rank functionary in the Ministry of War. He had no powerful backers, no political faction to protect him. Submitting a memorial defending the arrested officials was, effectively, painting a target on his own back. He submitted it anyway. The memorial was a thunderclap. Lu Jin, reading it, was apoplectic. A nobody, a mere clerk in the war ministry, dared to challenge him. Wang Yangming was arrested. In September of 1506, he was subjected to Tingjiang court flogging, one of the most brutal punishments in the Ming legal system. The prisoner was stripped, pressed face down on the stone floor, and beaten with heavy wooden planks. The eunuchs administering the punishment were known to strike with lethal force. Many prisoners died before reaching 20 strokes. Surviving 40 was considered miraculous. Wang Yangming received 40 strokes. Each blow split skin, tore muscle, shattered capillaries. Blood pooled on the stone beneath him. The pain was beyond description, a white-hot agony that consumed his entire body. But he did not scream, not once. He clenched his jaw, pressed his forehead against the cold stone, and endured, because he understood, instinctively, bone deep, that to cry out would be more than a physical surrender. It would be a spiritual one. They carried him away afterward, his back and legs a ruined landscape of torn flesh and exposed tissue. But Liu Jin wasn't finished. A few days later, the decree arrived. Wang Sharan was to be banished to Longcheng, in the remote mountains of Guizhou province, as a minor postal station officer. Longcheng. In 1506, it was the edge of the known world, a malarial wilderness of towering mountains, impenetrable forests, and venomous wildlife. The indigenous Miao and Jilao peoples had little contact with Han Chinese settlers, and tensions between the groups were constant and sometimes violent. Being sent to Longcheng was not a transfer. It was a slow execution, and even that wasn't enough for Liu Jin. He dispatched agents of the Jinyai Wei, the imperial secret police, to intercept Wang Yangming on the road and kill him before he ever reached Guizhou. Wang Yangming knew they were coming. He fled Beijing under cover of darkness, his wounds still weeping blood. He couldn't take the main roads. The assassins were watching them. He moved through back roads, slept in ruined temples, ate cold scraps, and tried to stay one step ahead of the men who wanted him dead. When he reached the banks of the Qiantang River, he realized the agents were close behind him. In the darkness, standing at the water's edge, he made a desperate decision. He removed his outer robe and left it on the riverbank. He wrote a farewell poem, the kind a man writes before drowning himself. Then he slipped onto a small boat and vanished into the night. The next morning, the Jinyai Wei found the robe and the poem. They concluded that Wang Yangming had thrown himself into the river. They reported the suicide to Liu Jin and closed the case. Meanwhile, Wang Yangming, disguised as a merchant, was making his way up the Yangtze River, heading west toward Guizhou alone, wounded, hunted. On that long, terrible journey, he asked himself questions that had no answers. Was it worth it? Is there really such a thing as the way of the sages? If there is, why do the righteous suffer? Why do the corrupt prosper? Why is heaven silent? He had no answers. He could only keep walking toward a place called Longcheng, toward the darkest chapter of his life, and though he didn't know it yet, toward the most important night in the history of Chinese philosophy. IV. The Cave of Enlightenment. In the spring of 1507, Wang Yangming finally arrived at Longcheng. What he found was despair made physical. Longcheng sat in a bowl of mountains, remote, roadless, and saturated with malarial mist. There were no proper buildings, no supply lines, no medical resources. The handful of decrepit huts that passed for a postal station were falling apart, roofs leaking, walls collapsing. The air was thick with the hum of disease, carrying insects. Venomous snakes moved through the undergrowth like living tripwires. His servants, the few who had accompanied him, took one look at this place and began to break. Some fell ill within days. Others simply disappeared in the night, choosing the dangers of the road over the certainty of this slow death. Wang Yangming stood alone in that poisoned valley and looked at what his life had become. This is where righteousness leads. This is the reward for following the way of the sages. He had no food supply chain, no pharmacy, no library, not even a single person who spoke his language. He began to build, with his own hands, hands that had held brushes and written poetry and turned the pages of the classics. He hauled stones and timber up the slope of Longgang Mountain. He carved a cave out of the rock face. He built a thatched lean-to against the cave mouth. This would be his home for the next 3 years. Winter was brutal, wind screaming through the cracks in the stone, the cold biting through his thin clothing into his already damaged body. Summer was worse. The miasma thickened, mosquitoes swarmed in clouds, and diseases cycled through him in relentless waves. Fever, cough, dysentery, delirium. He carved a stone coffin. He placed it next to his sleeping area, the way another man might place a nightstand. It was not morbidity. It was preparation. He knew, with the calm clarity of a man who has already lost everything, that any night could be the one where his body finally gave out. Every night, he lay on cold stone, listening to wind, insects, and the distant calls of animals. His body ached, his mind churned. And in that absolute solitude, stripped of status, stripped of comfort, stripped of every external identity he had ever held, Wang Yangming began the deepest investigation of his life. Not an investigation of bamboo, not an investigation of books, an investigation of the one thing he had left, his own mind. Then it happened. One night in 1508, the exact date is lost to history, but the moment is not. Wang Yangming lay in his cave, gravely ill, staring through the cave mouth at a sky salted with stars. He felt death nearby, not as a metaphor, as a physical presence, a weight on his chest, a thinning of the boundary between being and not being. And in that liminal space, suspended between life and death, he stopped fighting, he stopped grasping, he stopped furching outward. Instead, he asked himself one final question: if I am going to die tonight, then what was all of this for? What is the way of the sages, really? He thought about the bamboo. 7 days of staring and nothing. Zhu Xi had said, investigate external things, and universal principles will reveal themselves. But the bamboo had been mute. The world had been mute. 16 years of searching the outside world for truth, and the world had given him nothing but silence. He thought about his career. He had followed his conscience, defended the innocent, spoken truth to power, and the world had rewarded him with 40 strokes of a wooden plank, exiled to a poison wilderness, and assassins on his trail. If truth were really embedded in external things, if the universe were really organized around justice and reason, then why? Why did the world punish goodness and reward cruelty? And then, like a key turning in a lock that had been stuck for 16 years, the answer came. What if Zhu Xi was wrong from the very beginning? What if truth was never in the bamboo, never in the rocks, the rivers, the 10,000 things? What if the reason I couldn't find it out there is because it was never out there to begin with? He thought of Confucius, who spoke of ren humaneness as something that arises from within the heart. He thought of Mencius, who taught that every human being is born with liangzhi, innate moral knowledge, an intuitive sense of right and wrong that exists prior to education, prior to experience, prior to society. They weren't pointing outward, they were pointing inward. They were always pointing inward. And then the final piece fell into place. If I am about to die, what would a sage do in this moment? A sage would not complain about the harshness of the environment. A sage would not rage against the injustice of fate. A sage would not desperately search the external world for comfort or meaning. A sage would simply be present, clear, luminous. Because a sage's heart is already complete, already whole, already bright. Wang Yangming's entire body shook. He understood. Tianli, heavenly principle, is not in the bamboo. It is not in books. It is not in the pronouncements of ancient authorities. It is in the human heart. It has always been in the human heart. Zhu Wu, the investigation of things, does not mean analyzing external objects. It means rectifying the heart, clearing away the selfish desires, the fears, the attachments, the layers of social conditioning that obscure the innate moral clarity that every human being is born with. And a sage is not some unreachable figure from ancient history. A sage is anyone who manages to keep their innate knowledge luminous and their heart unclouded. The historical records say that Wang Yangming leaped to his feet and shouted so loudly that his few remaining servants came running, terrified, thinking their master had gone mad. He told them, his voice cracking with emotion, I understand now. I finally understand. The way of the sage is complete within my own nature. I was wrong to seek it from external things. This moment, known to history as the Enlightenment at Longchang, is one of the most important events in the history of East Asian philosophy. It is the moment when a broken, dying exile looked into the wreckage of his own life and found, not despair, but the foundation of an entirely new understanding of what it means to be human. The philosopher who became a general. After Longchang, Wang Yangming was a different person. The cave that had nearly been his tomb became his cathedral. The wilderness that had been his punishment became his laboratory. He walked out among the Miao and Jelo peoples, the indigenous communities that most Han officials dismissed as uncivilizable, and he saw in them exactly what his philosophy predicted: human beings with the same innate moral knowledge as anyone else, separated from the Han not by nature but by language, custom, and centuries of mutual misunderstanding. He learned their languages, he studied their customs, he settled their disputes, he taught their children to read, and slowly, improbably, the most desolate outpost in the Ming Empire became a place of order, trust, and even learning. In 1509, the political winds shifted. Liu Jin's grip on power was weakening. Wang Yangming was transferred to Luling County in Jiangxi Province as magistrate. In 1510, Liu Jin was executed for treason and corruption, and many of his victims were rehabilitated. Wang Yangming threw himself into local governance with the same intensity he brought to philosophy. Luling was plagued by bandits, corruption, and a backlog of unresolved legal cases. But Wang Yangming didn't simply impose harsher punishments. He asked a deeper question: why are there so many bandits? The answer, he found, was systemic. Land had been seized by the powerful, taxes were crushing, officials were corrupt. Ordinary people had been pushed past the breaking point. Their hearts still contained moral knowledge. They knew banditry was wrong, but desperation had buried that knowledge under layers of survival instinct. So Wang Yangming attacked the root, not just the symptom. He cracked down on the worst criminal leaders. Yes, but he also gave surrendering bandits farmland, taught them agricultural techniques, and helped them rebuild legitimate lives. He cleaned up the local administration, rooted out corrupt officials, and personally adjudicated the mountain of unresolved cases with a fairness and insight that earned him the title Blue Sky Official among the common people. His reputation grew. The court began to take notice. This exiled philosopher wasn't just a thinker, he was an extraordinarily effective administrator, and he seemed to possess an almost uncanny ability to understand what people were really thinking. In 1517, the court handed him the most dangerous assignment of his career. The mountainous border region where Jiangxi, Fujian, and Guangdong met had become a nest of banditry so severe that it threatened the stability of the entire south. Tens of thousands of armed rebels controlled the mountain passes, raided towns, killed officials, and looted government treasuries. Multiple military campaigns had failed to dislodge them. Wang Yangming was appointed governor with full military authority over the region. Everyone assumed the philosopher would be eaten alive, but Wang Yangming approached warfare the way he approached everything else, by understanding the human heart. Before deploying a single soldier, he conducted a thorough intelligence operation. He mapped the rebel groups, their leaders, their numbers, their supply lines, their internal tensions. He discovered what he expected to find. Most of the bandits were desperate farmers, driven to rebellion by the same forces of exploitation and injustice he had seen everywhere else. He developed a dual strategy: suppress and pacify. The hardened criminal leaders, those who had committed atrocities, would be hunted down without mercy, but ordinary followers would be offered amnesty, farmland, and a fresh start. Simultaneously, he reformed local governance to address the root causes, dismissing corrupt officials, reducing excessive taxation, rebuilding trust between the people and the state. Militarily, Wang Yangming proved to be a natural strategist of extraordinary caliber. He invented the 10-family placard system, organizing local communities into mutual aid networks that doubled as intelligence cells. He planted agents inside rebel groups to spread disinformation and foment internal division. He deployed feints, night raids, ambushes, and deception with a fluidity that would have impressed Sunday Du himself. But his greatest weapon was always psychological. Before every engagement, he issued proclamations offering clemency to those who surrendered. He understood that most of these fighters were afraid of the government, afraid of their own leaders, afraid of the unknown. By offering them a credible exit, he peeled away layer after layer of opposition. The diehards who remained were isolated and overwhelmed. Within 2 years, the South was pacified. Tens of thousands of rebels surrendered or dispersed. Order was restored. The court was stunned. A philosopher had accomplished what professional generals could not, but the greatest test was still ahead. On the 14th of June 1519, Zhu Chenhao, the Prince of Ning, launched a full-scale rebellion. The Prince of Ning was a direct descendant of the dynasty's founder. He had spent years secretly amassing an army of 100,000 soldiers and over 1,000 warships. His plan was brutal in its simplicity: seize Nanchang, sail down the Yangtze, capture Nanjing, the secondary capital, and then march north to take Beijing. When Wang Yangming received the news, he was in Fujian with 800 personal attendants and a handful of local militia, 800 against 100,000. Any rational person would have retreated and waited for the imperial army. But Wang Yangming saw what others couldn't: the prince's psychology. Zhu Chenhao had prepared for this moment for over a decade. But now that the moment had arrived, now that the irrevocable act of treason had been committed, his mind was churning with doubt. Would other princes support him? Would the people rally to his banner? How would the court respond? How quickly could the imperial army reach him? Wang Yangming understood. The prince's heart was already unstable. It could be shattered. He launched a campaign of psychological warfare that belongs in every military textbook ever written. He flooded the region with forged intelligence reports, claiming that 200,000 imperial troops were already converging on Jiangxi from multiple directions. He sent agents into the rebel camp to spread rumors of betrayal and imminent encirclement. He dispatched messengers to every loyal official in the region, ordering them to hold their positions and deny the rebels any easy victory. While the prince's confidence eroded, Wang Yangming frantically assembled a fighting force, pulling together local militia, reformed bandits, and volunteer soldiers from across Jiangxi. It was a patchwork army, uneven in training and equipment. But Wang Yangming didn't need them to match the rebel soldier for soldier. He needed them to deliver one decisive stroke, at exactly the right moment, at exactly the right place. The Prince of Ning, his nerve already fraying, threw his army against the city of Anqing, a strategic fortress on the Yangtze. If Anqing fell, the road to Nanjing was open. But the magistrate of Anqing, Zhang Wenqin, held firm. For over 10 days, the prince hurled his forces against the walls and was repulsed every time. While the prince was grinding himself against Anqing's walls, Wang Yangming made his move. He didn't march to relieve Anqing. He marched straight to Nanchang. It was a classic WIGJO, besiege way to save Zhao, one of the oldest and most daring strategies in Chinese military history. Nanchang was the prince's base. His family was there. His treasury was there. His legitimacy was there. Lose Nanchang, and the rebellion lost its foundation. On the 20th of July, Wang Yangming's forces appeared before Nanchang's gates. The garrison, caught completely off guard, crumbled. Wang Yangming captured the city, along with the prince's family, his treasury, and his administrative apparatus. When the news reached the Prince of Ning at Anqing, the effect was exactly what Wang Yangming had predicted: total psychological collapse. The prince abandoned the siege and rushed his entire army back toward Nanchang. On the 26th of July, the two forces met on Poyang Lake, the same body of water where, 156 years earlier, the dynasty's founder had fought his own decisive naval battle. The prince's fleet was vast, 1,000 ships spread across the lake in dense formation. Wang Yangming's navy was smaller and less well-armed. But Wang Yangming had fire. That night, with the wind at his back, he launched fire ships into the prince's fleet. Boats loaded with oil and kindling, set ablaze, driven by wind and current into the packed rebel formation. The lake became an inferno. Ship after ship caught fire. Soldiers leaped into the water. Those on shore broke and ran. The prince's army, 100,000 strong on paper, dissolved in a single night of flame and terror. Zhu Chenhao himself was captured in the chaos. From the first day of rebellion to the capture of the prince, 43 days, Wang Yangming's active military campaign, 35 days. 35 days to crush a rebellion that could have torn the empire apart. VI. the light that could not be extinguished. You might expect that saving the empire would earn a man gratitude, honors, perhaps a comfortable retirement. You would be wrong. The Zhengde emperor, the same pleasure-seeking adolescent who had let Lu Jin run the country, was furious, not because the rebellion had happened, but because it was over. He had been marching south with his army, eager to play the role of conquering hero, and Wang Yangming had stolen his war. An imperial edict arrived with an instruction so absurd it reads like satire: release the prince, let him rebel again, so that the emperor can personally defeat him. Wang Yangming stared at the order. The philosopher who had written treatises on the unity of knowledge and action was being asked to undo the most consequential action of his life, to release a dangerous traitor, restart a civil war, and sacrifice tens of thousands of lives, so that a vain emperor could stage a piece of political theater. Wang Yangming maneuvered carefully, stalling and working through allies at court until cooler heads prevailed, and the order was withdrawn. But the damage was done. The jealous and the fearful had taken notice. Whisper campaigns began. Wang Yangming defeated the prince too quickly. He must have been secretly allied with him. He is building a power base in Jiangxi. He has ambitions. None of it was true. All of it was effective. Wang Yangming's rewards were delayed, diminished, and delivered with suspicion rather than gratitude. The man who had saved the dynasty found himself treated as a potential threat to it. He bore it in silence. Not the silence of defeat, the silence of a man who understood that some battles cannot be won by fighting. After the Zhengde emperor's death in 1521, Wang Yangming hoped for a fresh start under the new Jiajing emperor. Instead, the court became consumed by the Great Rights controversy, a years-long political crisis over whether the new emperor should formally recognize his biological father or his predecessor's father as his ritual parent. The philosophical implications were real, but the fight was really about power. Who controlled the emperor? Who defined orthodoxy? Who set the terms of political legitimacy? Officials were flogged, exiled, and killed over what was, at its core, a struggle for dominance dressed in the language of Confucian propriety. Wang Yangming found the whole spectacle repugnant. These men were arguing about ritual niceties while the people starved, while borders were threatened, while the machinery of governance rotted from within. He said nothing publicly. He withdrew. In 1524, at the age of 53, Wang Yangming returned to his hometown and devoted himself entirely to teaching. And it was here, in the lecture halls and hillside academies of Zhejiang, that Wang Yangming's true revolution began. His philosophy, now fully developed, rested on three pillars: the Xinzhen Dao. The heart-mind is principle. Universal truth is not embedded in external objects waiting to be excavated through observation. It exists within the human heart-mind. Every person is born with an innate moral compass. You do not need to search the world for truth. You need to clear the obstructions within yourself that prevent you from seeing it. Zhu Mai. The unity of knowledge and action. Genuine knowledge and genuine action are inseparable. If you truly know that something is right, but do not act on it, then you do not truly know it. Knowledge that does not manifest in behavior is not knowledge. It is self-deception. To know filial piety is to practice filial piety. To know justice is to pursue justice. The gap between knowing and doing is the gap between illusion and reality. Shileng-zhe, the extension of innate moral knowledge. Every human being possesses long-zhe, an inborn, intuitive awareness of good and evil, right and wrong. But this innate knowledge is constantly obscured by selfish desires, social conditioning, fear, and ego. The task of moral cultivation is not to acquire new knowledge from outside, but to clear away the internal obstructions that cloud the moral knowledge you already have. To extend your innate knowledge is to let your original moral clarity shine through, and then to act on it, without hesitation, without compromise. These ideas were, in the context of 16th century China, revolutionary. They said, you don't need a library full of commentaries to find the truth. You don't need a hierarchy of scholars interpreting the classics for you. You don't need to submit to an external authority that claims to know what is right. You already have the answer for the peasant farmer, the itinerant merchant, the illiterate craftsman. people who had been told their entire lives that wisdom belonged to the educated elite. This was a thunderbolt. Wang Yangming was telling them, your moral intuition is just as valid as the Grand Secretary's. Your heart contains the same truth as Confucius's. Students flocked to him, hundreds, eventually thousands, officials, merchants, farmers, artisans, people from every stratum of society. Wang Yangming treated them all as equals because his philosophy demanded it. If every heart contains the same innate moral knowledge, then no heart is superior to any other. His teaching method was Socratic. He asked questions, provoked reflection, and drew out what his students already knew but hadn't yet recognized. His great disciples, Xu Ai, Qian Dihong, Wang Ji, Zhu Shuyi, carried the torch forward, establishing academies across China, debating rival schools, and ensuring that the master's teachings reached every corner of the empire. The orthodox establishment fought back ferociously. Followers of Zhu Shi's Neo-Confucianism denounced Wang Yangming as a heretic, a demagogue, a corrupter of public morals. Officials petitioned the emperor to ban his lectures, burn his books, close his academies. Wang Yangming's response was characteristically serene. My teaching accords with the human heart. How can you possibly extinguish it? He was right. You can burn books, you can close academies, you can exile teachers, but you cannot extinguish what lives inside every human heart. V7, the final journey. In 1527, the court came calling one last time. Rebellion had erupted along the Guangxi-Guangdong border. Indigenous leaders had seized territory, overwhelmed local garrisons, and killed government officials. Multiple pacification campaigns had failed. The Jiajing emperor, perhaps grudgingly, recognized that only one man had the combination of strategic brilliance, administrative skill, and moral authority necessary to resolve the crisis: Wang Yangming. He was 56 years old. His body was failing. Chronic lung disease had left him coughing blood. His heart was weakening. His physicians told him bluntly the journey to Guangxi would kill him. His students begged him not to go. They knelt before him, weeping. Master, your health cannot withstand this. If you go, you will not return. Decline the appointment. The court will understand. Wang Yangming was silent for a long time. Then he said, the nation is in difficulty. How can I refuse? If I stay home because my body is weak, then everything I have taught about the unity of knowledge and action becomes empty words. I know that my country needs me. Therefore, I must go. This is true unity of knowledge and action. In the autumn of 1527, Wang Yangming set out for Guangxi. He carried his philosophy with him like a lantern, and his body like a burden. Guangxi was worse than he expected. The terrain was savage, the climate lethal, and the local population deeply alienated from the imperial government. But Wang Yangming applied his proven approach one final time: ruthless military action against the most dangerous leaders, combined with amnesty, land redistribution, and administrative reform for everyone else. It worked. By mid-1528, the rebellion was suppressed, but Wang Yangming's body was finished. In August 1528, he submitted a memorial requesting permission to return home to recuperate. It was granted. He began the long journey east, carried in a sedan chair, because he no longer had the strength to ride a horse. The procession moved slowly through the mountains and river valleys of southern China, stopping frequently as Wang Yangming's condition deteriorated. His students walked alongside him, watching the master they revered waste away before their eyes. Wang Yangming knew he was dying, and he was at peace. Along the way, he continued to teach. He answered his students' questions. He discussed philosophy with the calm, unhurried clarity of a man who has no more reason to rush. One of his students, Zhou asked him, Master, what is the one thing you most want to leave to future generations? Wang Yangming considered the question. Then he spoke 4 characters: Ctian Guanni. This heart-mind is luminous. As long as a person's heart is luminous, clear, honest, aligned with innate moral knowledge, then they have nothing to fear, not failure, not exile, not persecution, not death. On the 28th of November 1529, in a small boat on the river near Nan'an Prefecture in Jiangxi Province, Wang Yangming's condition reached its final extremity. Zhou sat at his bedside, tears streaming down his face. Master, do you have any final words? Wang Yangming opened his eyes. He looked around the room, at the flickering lamplight, at the faces of his students, at the darkness beyond the windows. He smiled. This heart-mind is luminous. What more is there to say? He closed his eyes. He did not open them again. Closing. Wang Yangming died on the road, not on a battlefield, not in a palace, not on a lectern. He died in transit, between one place and another, between life and whatever comes after, which feels somehow exactly right for a man who spent his entire existence in motion, moving toward truth, moving through suffering, moving past the boundaries that other men accepted as permanent. He was 57 years old. The court posthumously granted him the title Marquis of Xinjiang and the honorific name Wenqing, completion of culture. But the orthodox establishment continued to suppress his teachings for decades. They banned his philosophy from the civil service examinations. They shuttered his academies. They tried to erase him from intellectual history. They failed. Wang Yangming's students carried the flame forward, through academies and printing presses, through debates and quiet conversations, through the decades and centuries that followed. By the late Ming Dynasty, Yangming's school of the heart-mind had become one of the most influential intellectual movements in Chinese history. Its influence crossed oceans. In Japan, the samurai scholars of the late Edo period, men like Forty Shio Heihachi, Yoshida Shine, and Saik Takamori devoured Wang Yangming's writings and used the principle of the unity of knowledge and action as the philosophical engine of the Meiji Restoration that transformed Japan into a modern nation. 500 years later, Wang Yangming's body has long returned to the earth, but his ideas have not. And so I want to leave you, not with a summary but with a question. The same question that drove Wang Yangming through bamboo groves, through prison cells, through poison mountains, through battlefields, through the long final road home. How many of the things you believe? Do you believe because you examine them with your own heart? And how many do you believe simply because someone told you to? You know the difference between right and wrong. You have always known. Not because a teacher told you, not because a book told you, not because society told you. You know because that knowledge was placed inside you before you were born. The question is not whether you have this light. The question is whether you have the courage to follow it. C.N. Gorn, this heart-mind is luminous. What more is there to say? If this story moved something inside you, if it made you pause, even for a moment, and look inward, then I've done my job. But this is only the beginning. Subscribe to join me on this journey through the minds that shaped our world. Like this video if you believe that philosophy isn't just an academic exercise, it is the most practical thing a human being can do. And leave a comment. What does this heart-mind is luminous mean to you? Follow me, and together, let's remember the souls who should never be forgotten. I'll see you in the next one.